Tonight on Buffy, in a world of evil,
What's he doing here?
who can the chosen one trust?
Buffy!
Critics call it the surprise hit of the season. Buffy, tonight on the WB.
Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Slade, the Buffyverse Revisited. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Jeremy.
I'm your other host, James.
And this week we'll be diving into episode 5 of season 1, titled Never Kill a Boy on the First Date.
It's a good rule to live by in
It is
general.
good rule.
As a boy, I feel like it's a good rule.
Yes, please. Of course, it's been 132 years since I've been on a date, so I don't think I need to worry about getting killed.
You're only 43. That's a lie.
Well, I mean, in dog years, maybe I'm.
Are you 43 in this life?
Right, exactly.
What?
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 Yeah. That's the this week's episode. And James, do we have any news, notes, corrections, emails, etc.?
No, we do not. Still, yeah.
No screw ups last week?
No screw ups. No. I mean, unless you found something that I missed, but yeah. I tend to go through it with a pretty fine ear just to be sure. You know, after
I didn't find anything. I normally don't find anything, and you'll say, "Hey, I da 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 da." I'm like, "Oh shit, I completely missed that."
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Because you're, the guru. So
I am. That's my middle name. It's James Guru Mayberry.
James. James. Guru.
Yeah, my parents were very prescient.
JG in the house. All right. Well, then, do you have anything you would need to throw out to the audience?
No, just that I would like to see some emails coming in.
As would I. That would be great.
I would also like to see some comments on the Facebook or the Twitter, yep. Wherever.
Some kind of interaction, some kind of notification that we're reaching some ears.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten some feedback personally from people that have listened, but nothing coming in through like emails or Facebook or anything like that. So, if you don't know either Jeremy or I personally, please feel free to shoot us an email, reach out on our socials, let us know what you think.
Anything, even if you tell us we suck. Hey.
Yeah.
At least it's some banter back and forth.
Right. And if you do tell us we suck and you don't tell us why, expect us to reach back out to you to find out why you think we suck.
Yeah. And what we can do to not suck.
Right. So we can try and not suck.
Right.
For you.
Just not sucking is basically our number one goal.
Right. And that permeates all aspects of our lives. I try not to suck in pretty much everything.
I'm just going to leave that alone. I'm not going to touch that.
Wow. All right.
Well, let's jump into some dates and deets, James.
All right. As Jeremy previously stated, this is episode 5, season 1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. It originally aired on March 31st, 1997 on the WB network. Our director is David Semmel, who has directed 6 total episodes here in the Buffyverse for us, 4 for Buffy and 2 for Angel. Buffy, he directed obviously this episode, What's My Line Part 2, Go Fish, and Lover's Walk. That's a good Spike episode. Lover's Walk.
It is.
Angel, he directed Expecting and Are You Now or Have You Ever Been, which I actually
Communist Party.
Well, that's where they got the title for the episode. I don't know if you remember that episode. It's the episode where we're first introduced to the Hyperion Hotel.
Oh yeah, okay. Yep.
And there's a lot of flashbacks. I actually rewatched that episode this past week because it is hands down, it's my favorite episode of Angel.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Hyperion and Wolfram and Hart and Lindsay and all those were great antagonists for him.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So non-Buffyverse director credits. He did episodes of Watchmen, the recent HBO adaptation of the Watchmen comic.
Yeah, which I don't care for.
I haven't watched it. So episodes of Star Trek Discovery, CSI, Heroes, and House. I was a big fan of House. I loved House.
You know, I've never seen a single episode.
No, I would recommend it. I would recommend it to anybody that hasn't seen it. It's very good. Movies, again, none. Another director here who didn't want to or didn't have the opportunity to branch out onto the big screen.
Yeah. But he did do a metric shit ton of Beverly Hills 90210
He did.
as an associate producer, but you know.
Our credited writers for this episode are Rob Des Hotel and Dean Batali. They appear to be a writing duo. Their Buffyverse credits for Rob and Dean are 5 episodes total, just here in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, nothing for Angel. Together they wrote, obviously, this episode, The Puppet Show, The Dark Age, Phases, and Killed by Death. Their non-Buffyverse credits include episodes of That 70s Show and The Adventures of Pete and Pete. And movie...
Pete.
I never watched it.
Oh, I loved it.
And movie writing credits, they don't have any. Either
in fact, if you
as a pair.
If you're out there listening and you also love The Adventures of Pete and Pete, those two fellows have their own podcast. So check it out. I can't remember the name of it, or I would plug it, but it's out there and it's not hard to find, and it's pretty cool, pretty funny.
I mean, if they were clever, they would call it The Podcast of Pete and Pete.
Yeah, but then again, you know, I don't know about copyright and all that kind of jazz. I don't know how that worked.
True. Our episode synopsis, excuse me. Our episode synopsis for this week is: yearning for a normal life, Buffy agrees to go on a date with the mysterious and brooding Owen. She clearly has a type, mysterious and brooding.
Yeah, that's pretty clear.
Meanwhile, Giles discovers a prophecy of coming danger, which could interfere with her dating plans, but Buffy chooses Owen over battling with the forces of darkness. However, when Giles is trapped by a group of vampires, Buffy must figure out a way to balance dating and slaying.
Oh my. Now, let me give you the glorious IMDb.
Please hit me with it.
Like last week, this is very brief and to the point, and actually not too bad, but it just says, with Buffy preoccupied by her date with Owen, Giles is trapped by a group of vampires seeking to raise a powerful leader.
Okay.
Well, not bad.
No, that one's not too bad. It's pretty on the spot.
Yep, pretty right there and to the point.
Mm-hmm.
So let's let's get to our coverage. So we start immediately with, and I had to rewatch this little chunk a few times because it goes from black to a vampire popping up and going, "Arr!" And he has got the worst prosthetic teeth on that I have. It makes him look like a big buck tooth vampire. I guess at that point in time they weren't able to make proper fitting teeth for all guest actors and stuff, so they were probably just using what they had, but it clearly did not fit this guy's mouth. So if you're rewatching this episode, definitely check that out. But so he does that, and then pow, he gets punched in the face, and Buffy's there. They're in the graveyard. It's nighttime. She's clearly out hunting, patrolling, as they like to call it. And they go back and forth. She doesn't have too much trouble with him. She dispatches him pretty handily. And out from behind a big tombstone comes Giles, who's been there all along, apparently taking notes and and giving her a critiquing, uh, and says some things like, I didn't write down his specific critiques, but something along the lines of, kind of slow, a little blah blah blah, and a little too bloody for my taste. And I thought, bloody? I didn't see one speck of blood
Right.
from anywhere because she dusted him. Oh, and I made note that this week he did dust.
He did dust.
So they must have a little extra in the budget this week.
This was so far 5 episodes in. I've noticed that a lot of the special effects have actually aged fairly well.
Yeah, the dusting.
But I was going to say, except in certain instances of the dusting.
Well,
effect.
yeah, because in this one, he's like this at the camera, and then as he he gets right to about here, almost out of sight of the camera, and then he dusts.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like the actual dusting was fine, but it was just the way it was on screen. It was kind of off to the side and almost out of view.
Right.
But
right.
hey, at least we got a dusting.
True. True.
So, so anyway, Giles is critiquing her, and he says, "Oh, what's that?" and walks over to the pile of dust, and there's a ring there which he scoops up with his pencil that he's been using to write with, and he's studying it, and Buffy's like, "Well, what's the story there?" And he doesn't know what the ring is, but it bothers him, so he wants to consult his books to see if he can figure out what's going on with this ring. And I want to bring this up. Why is it when a vamp gets dusted, everything is dusted? Clothes, everything, but not their jewelry.
Well, I would. So if we want to think too much on it, I would
love overthinking things.
I would liken it to spontaneous human combustion, where in reported cases of that, certain jewelry items are left behind.
Okay, I can buy that.
Or even cases of cremation.
Yeah, because the bones are left behind.
Right, bones are typically left behind.
That's typically what you get back as ashes. Is they pulverize the bones after cremation.
Right. But jewelry and all of those sorts of effects are typically removed because they won't burn.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's a good. I buy it.
That would be.
I'll allow it.
If I were pressed to give an explanation, that would be my explanation.
I'll buy that for $1. All right. So, just as Giles says he wants to consult his books, we immediately shift to the Master down in his dirty cave lair, and he's
a welcome return, if I might interject.
Yes, definitely. And he slams this huge, filthy, dusty, dirty, nasty book down, and opens the clasp on the side, and begins reading from it. And I was going to write down word for word what he said and relay it, but I thought, you know what? Let's just play a clip of what it is he says.
And there will be a time of crisis, of worlds hanging in the balance. And in this time shall come the Anointed, the Master's great warrior. And the Slayer will not know him, will not stop him, and he will lead her into hell. As it is written, so shall it be. 5 will die, and from their ashes the Anointed shall rise. The brethren of Aurelius shall greet him and usher him to his immortal destiny. As it is written, so shall it be.
So shall it be. So that's what he says. He's reading this prophecy from this very old tome that is clearly written about him. And we hear about this anointed one. We hear about this Order of Aurelius, which is at this point some type of they don't tell you yet, so it's just okay, some type of ancient old sect or something.
Right.
And,
I would
go ahead.
I would like to say that, or point out that in that scene and several scenes throughout the episode, they're referred to as the brethren of Aurelius, and sometimes they're referred to as the Order of Aurelius.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure where the disconnect or what the reasoning behind that in the script was, but they are identified as either or pretty
Yeah.
much throughout the episode.
Maybe the writers just couldn't get their act together. Maybe one of them decided to call it Brethren, and one was the Order of Aurelius, and then that's how we're going to tell who wrote which scene. So. But anyway, so he goes on. He's got a few goons there with him, and that's who he's reading this big prophecy to and everything. And he's pissed because one of the goons went out and got himself killed already. That's the one that we saw in the graveyard there with Buffy. So news travels really fast in Sunnydale. But anyway, yeah, went out and got himself killed, and so he's basically threatening the rest of them. He grabs one by the throat and lifts him up off the ground, and he's basically just threatening, like, you better not fail in bringing me back the anointed one, etc., and doing evil master things, saying evil mastery things. And then he just yeets this dude across the cavern like 2 miles through this like stack of boxes or what. I thought he was going to get dusted. I thought he was going to land on a broken shard of wood from one of these crates and get dusted, but he didn't. No. Basically, it's just a warning, and that's our cold open.
That is our cold open. And when we come back from our opening credits, we find Buffy sitting at a table in the Sunnydale High School library, studying the ring that they found the previous night. Giles comes down from the stacks and walks over to her as he's flipping through a book. And he says he believes the symbol on the ring is the rune for fidelity, but it doesn't connect to any of the sects that he's studied. Buffy shows him the ring, indicating another engraving of a sun and 3 stars that she thinks they've seen before. Giles says he doesn't think so, and Buffy promptly hands him an open book where she's found the symbol.
Yeah, like immediately.
Right. And it belongs to the Order of Aurelius. At that point, a male student comes into the library who Buffy identifies as Owen. Giles asks what he wants, and Owen kind of incredulously says he's looking for a book. And Buffy points out to Giles that that's why students come to the school library, and Giles says he was beginning to suspect that that was a myth. Owen says he's looking for a copy of a collection of poems from Emily Dickinson, and Giles points into the stacks. Owen heads over, and Buffy follows, and they're engaging in a little casual back and forth. It's flirtatious. It's apparent that there's like a mutual thing between them.
Yeah, it's clear to me at least that she is definitely into him.
Yeah, and he
know him better.
Yeah, and he indicates that he's been paying attention to her as well.
Yeah.
So Owen checks out his book with Giles and leaves. Giles tells Buffy that the Order of Aurelius is a very old and venerated sect of vampires, and if they're here, it's for a reason. And Buffy kind of disregards what he's saying and wants to know if he has another copy of the Emily Dickinson book. And Giles is exasperated and tells her that they need to focus on the problem at hand. And Buffy agrees before asking, "Does this outfit make me look fat?"
Yeah. And he just looks at her like, "Oh, what have I done with my life?"
Yes. And
So then we hop into lunchtime. Willow and Buffy are in, they're paying for their lunch there in the cafeteria, and Willow says, "Wow, Owen Thurman talked to you?" And so I guess this Owen Thurman is pretty well, I guess, known in school. And she says, Willow's like, "Oh, he's so cool and blah 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 blah," and he could. How long was it? He can brood for 16
40
hours straight, or
40 minutes.
40 minutes. Yeah, he can brood for 40 straight minutes. So
she said she clocked him.
Yeah. So he's mysterious and broody.
Again, clearly Buffy has a type.
Yes. I think they're trying to establish that very early on. Then they're at their lunch. They've gone to their table, and Xander's there, and they're commenting on the horrible state of the food that they're eating. Because that's a funny thing to throw in, because it's school food. Everybody knows that school food for the most part sucked. And how was she's Xander says, well, how was slaying? How'd your slaying go? And she's like, well, there's some hoity-toity vamp sect in town, but other than that, fine and dandy. And Xander comments on Mr. Excitement Owen when he looks over and sees him sitting by himself and reading a book. And of course Buffy's like, oh, he looks lonely. Somebody should sit with him, don't you think? And Willow's like, well, yes, just out of courtesy, kindness. So Buffy's like, sweet, grabs her tray and heads over. And at the same time, Cordelia, she shows up and just slams right into Buffy, knocks her tray out of her hands. Everything splatters on the floor. And, Owen hops up to help Buffy pick everything up. And Cordelia's obviously trying to move in on Owen, and wants to know if he's going to the bronze. And they had that little back and forth, and then he's like, are you going, Buffy? And she's like, he's like, meet you there at 8. And she's like, sure. And Cordelia's kind of like, bitch. So yeah, they're all going to be at the bronze that night at 8.
They are. We follow up with Buffy and Willow coming in from the quad, and they're going back and forth about whether or not Owen and Buffy meeting tonight at the bronze is a big deal. Willow says it is. Buffy says it's not. And they spot Giles, who's approaching, and he's heard their back and forth. And Willow tells him to tell Buffy it's a big deal, to which Giles says he's afraid it's very big. But Buffy's date with Owen isn't what he's talking about. As we follow the trio into the library, and Giles tells them he's discovered a violent and disturbing prophecy about to be fulfilled. He tells Buffy she was spot on with the connection between the ring and the Order of Aurelius, and informs them that he's been looking at the writings of Aurelius himself, who prophesies that the brethren of his order would bring the master to the anointed, or would bring the master the anointed. Right. A warrior who would rise from the ashes of the 5 on the evening of the 1000th day after the advent of Septis, which is tonight. Buffy protests because tonight is her date with Owen, and Giles tells her that her date will have to be put on hold because they have a chance tonight to beat back the dark forces aligning against them.
Yep, like big happenings. And then we immediately cut to the graveyard that night, and there is nothing going on. Buffy and Giles are just sitting there. You hear crickets. She's like sipping like a Coke from the 7-Eleven. They're just totally bored. She's annoyed. He clearly does not want to be there. So he decides, well, okay, we've waited long enough. And he figures Buffy can go ahead and go to the bronze and go to her date. And even though, he doesn't agree with it. And then he warns her, because we all know that Xander and Willow know Buffy's secret, and like they know the score, but he kind of warns her that, not to bring another person into her fold, to know her secret, because, the more people know, then the more she's at risk, the more they're at risk,
Right.
etc. So, so she goes, okay, well, I won't wear my button that says I'm a Slayer. Ask me how. And he's kind of like, ugh. And he as she leaves, he reads, or no, he's not reading. He's quoting out of his memory from what he had read, I believe. And he says, 5 will die, and from their ashes the anointed shall rise. And then he's kind of like, man, I was sure it was tonight. I'm sure my calculations were right, but guess not.
Right. And at that point, we are taken to a bus driving down the street. We pan over various passengers in the bus as we come to a little boy flying a toy plane around. He turns to another passenger. The other passenger is kind of dirty, a little raggedy. In my notes, I call him Grungy Guy.
Oh, I have a name for him, which I will comment on as soon as you're done.
And he tells Grungy Guy that he went on an airplane, and the man immediately begins to mumble. He's basically mumbling about Revelation 6:8.
Yeah, just in a weird
Right.
version of.
And for those unfamiliar, Revelation 6:8 is about a pale horse emerging with death as its rider.
Yeah. The apocalypse, the
right.
The beginning of the apocalypse is what it's all
about. And that takes us immediately to the Bronze.
Now I'd like to pause if we could. Here's where I'd like to.
Sure.
I called him terrible ADR guy.
Terrible ADR guy.
I don't know if you noticed it. It was most noticeable in these bus scenes. It's not as noticeable later on, but in these bus scenes, it is so obvious that this guy has been completely ADR'd. Now, for anybody listening that doesn't know what ADR, what I'm even talking about, it stands for additional dialogue replacement. It's what they do it in TVs and movies all the time. Usually, it's if they didn't have great sound on set, excuse me, then in post they'll bring the actor or actors in to kind of redub their lines in the studio, where it'll be perfect and clear and everything. But It's also used a lot to, for whatever reason, sometimes the director or the producers or editor or whatever decides that a certain actor's voice or delivery or whatever is just not working. So they will bring in someone. Generally, it's generally a professional voice person. They'll bring someone in to completely redub over that person's lines, and it's happened many times to people who didn't know it was going to happen. For instance, David Prowse in the Star Wars movies, he had no idea that Lucas was going to bring in James Earl Jones to, which it's a good thing it was, if you've ever heard David Prowse's actual lines in the movie. But so anyway, that's what ADR is. And so I call this guy, from now on, I call him terrible ADR guy or just ADR dude. But it's so poor. It's so poor. If you go back and watch his first, I want to say 2 or 3 lines there on the bus, it's so bad. It's so bad it's good. Because the voice doesn't even match. It's hilarious.
Can we both agree, though, that once we find out his name, we'll use his actual name so that it's not too confusing for people?
I did not write it down.
I've got it here in my
because
notes.
they only say it towards the end when he finds a newspaper clipping, and I didn't even write it down because I just continued to call him ADR dude. But yeah, once you say it, if you say it, then I'll go with
it. It might just be a little confusing to keep jumping forth between Grungy Guy and ADR dude. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I couldn't get past it. I just couldn't get past this. It was so egregious, but
There's
also
actually
hilarious.
there's actually a scene that I want to talk about later, and I don't know what they call it for these. Maybe you do, but it's kind of similar to the ADR situation, where sometimes they'll decide there needs to be an insert shot of
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So they'll maybe film it with whoever happens to be on hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sometimes very, very obvious that it's not who it's supposed to be.
Yeah. They'll do. You talking about using like a stand-in?
Yeah, something like
somebody
that.
from behind or
But
from really far distance or something.
Right. There's
Pickup shots, yeah.
pickup shots. There's a scene like that later on that I want to address because it's very obvious if you
Oh, darn it.
watch.
I missed it.
You won't be able,
because when I'm taking notes with the
Right.
episode, sometimes you miss little
Right.
things here and there, and darn
Trust-
it, I will
after-
go back and watch this now.
after I point it out, you won't be able to miss it. Even if you're not looking for it going forward,
Good,
you won't be able to
good,
miss
because I want to go back, because now I want to go back and see it.
So then we're at the Bronze. Buffy rushes in. She's looking around for Owen, and she spots him dancing with Cordelia. And Owen actually doesn't look like he's very comfortable.
Yeah, he looks very like, what? Because she's
Yeah.
very handsy.
Yeah.
She's being very handsy.
But Buffy sees them, and she's crushed. She's just heartbroken. And she turns and leaves the Bronze. And that takes us back to the bus, where grungy guy is now standing in the aisle, ranting about fire coming down and judgment and sin. And the driver's like, you got to sit down, dude.
Yeah, like, dude, seriously.
Right. At which point a vampire steps in front of the bus, and the driver slams on the brakes, but still hits the vampire. And the bus swerves, runs through a sign, and finally comes to a stop hitting a pole. The driver looks back on the passengers and asks if everyone's okay. They all look at each other, and they're shaken but otherwise fine.
And the driver has one of the gnarliest gashes on his head. Like, it looks like he went through the windshield face first and landed in a field of broken glass. Like,
right.
And the accident wasn't that horrific.
Right. VFX was like, we need to do it up here.
They clearly wanted something to do that day.
So the driver gets out and goes over to the victim that he hit to see if he's okay. And he kneels down by him, at which point the vamp grabs him by the throat and chokes him. Meanwhile, another vamp.
This episode.
What's that?
I said a lot of throat grabbing in this episode.
Maybe it was.
We're not done. We're not done.
We're not done. Yeah, maybe it was one of the writer's kinks, and they worked it in.
Yep. Choke me.
Right. As another vampire punches out a window in the bus and grabs grungy guy, pulls him out, and feeds on him as other vamps all climb into the bus to help themselves to the smorgasbord on wheels.
Yeah, so in other words, everybody on this bus is being eaten.
Yes.
And ADR guy is ADR screaming. So
yes.
I made a note of that when he didn't scream, but he kind of made this I mean, I guess kind of a scream, but it was clearly ADR. I'm like, wow, they even ADR'd the guy's yell. Who did this guy piss off is what I want to know. Anyway, we're back at school. Buffy's locker. She's with Willow. She's lamenting her date failure with Owen.
No, she's with Xander.
Oh, I thought she was with Willow.
Nope,
I need to start writing that down for sure. Who she's with? You're right. You're right. Okay, she's with Xander, and again, lamenting her date failure with Owen, and Xander doesn't really sympathize because, as we all know, as the viewers, he has a total, complete crush on Buffy. He wants to be with Buffy. So he doesn't. He just doesn't have much sympathy. he's trying to make it seem like he has a little bit, but he clearly doesn't. And he's, kind of like, well, you know, you and this guy's reading and blah blah. He's like, I can read too, So he's always trying to insert himself into her love life because he clearly just loves her madly. And then Owen shows. Oh, go ahead.
I was say something that Xander points out here that I thought was funny is he's kind of like, why didn't you just like make up an excuse?
Yeah.
For the dude, like why you couldn't be there.
Yeah, and she comes up with she says a couple of crazy things, and he's like, is that when he says, or flat tire?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So then Owen shows up there at the locker, and she comes up with some more crazy. She's like, oh yeah, my watch was broken, and we don't have any clocks in my house, and blah blah blah. And he's like, oh, that's happened to me before, and clearly trying to, he gets it. And so he gives her his watch and says, maybe they can try it again like tonight. And she's like, she's all perked up now. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. And like I said, he gives her his watch and says, here, I'll pick you up at 7. And because he's not really into Cordelia, he says she's grabby. So this has just made Buffy's day right here. So he's like, I'll pick you up at 7. And yeah, Xander's totally jelly. He's crushed.
So in this scene, Buffy, when Owen says, I'll even lend you my watch, he gives her this really nice gold pocket watch and chain.
Yeah, and it's not just a Casio wristwatch.
Right. And Xander's eyes just go wide.
Yeah.
And then we see Xander looking at his watch, and it's a Tweety Bird wristwatch.
Yeah.
But this is the scene I was actually talking about earlier.
Okay.
There's an insert shot of the watch exchange between Owen and Buffy. Okay. And if you it's a close up of their hands.
Yeah.
Go back and watch it. That is not a 16-year-old girl's hand that is accepting that watch.
That's why I missed it. I wasn't watching that closely to the exchange. Yeah.
That is the hand of a grown-ass man.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
Go back and watch it.
That's awesome.
Like it's wrinkly. It's like callus cracked almost, a little bit ashy. Like
it's probably like some grip. They're
most likely.
Hey, they're like, here, we got to grab this shot. Just hand this watch to and he's like, oh, okay, and he probably wasn't even thinking about it. But wow, that is awesome. I can't wait to go back and look at that.
Yep. My guess is that they added it when they realized they had the shot of like Xander looking at the watch and like being in awe of it, and then looking at his Tweety Bird watch.
They realized they needed to show the watch.
Right. They needed a better look at the watch, and then
SMG was probably, well, no, she wasn't underage back then.
No, she was 19.
She was playing underage. Yeah, I was going to say maybe she couldn't film, but no, she must have. Maybe she was taking a nap in her trailer,
or she was off filming something else.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, could be. But that's freaking awesome. I can't wait to go and look at that. Hands. We'll call him Man Hands.
Go back and watch it. I urge you. You will not be able to unsee it.
Oh yes, I can't wait. I can't wait.
So that leads us to back to the library, Giles's office. Buffy barges in on Giles, who's clearly got a headache. He's rubbing his head. He's sitting down to have some tea. She asks how it's going. He's like, all right. And she's like, I see we're still working on the prophecy. Tonight's looking pretty slow, right? It's probably best to relax and regroup, and I'll see you tomorrow, before she heads right back out the door.
Yeah.
And Giles comments to himself, she's the strangest girl. And that takes us to the Master's lair again, where he's addressing the Brethren of Aurelius. telling them that they've done well and everything's in place towards putting him one step closer to freeing himself of the mystical prison he's been in so long that he's nearly forgotten what it's like to be on the surface. But there'll be time enough to remember when he rules it. And if the Slayer tries to stop them, they are to give their own lives to make sure the Anointed One is brought to the Master.
Yeah. So are these guys in fact supposed to be the Order of Aurelius?
I'm presuming so.
Because they look like the Order of Nerds. Like there's like what is there 3 of them or 4 of them?
I think there's 3.
Okay, so there's 3 of these dudes who none of them ever have a line,
right?
Because then they'd have to pay them more money. They're basically just stand-ins,
right?
And they look just totally just goofy. I don't know.
I will say that there was obviously 4 of them at one point. Buffy's already staked
killed
one
the
of them.
first one in the opening scene.
I will say that based on what we've seen so far, my assumption is that they're the Brethren, because when the Master was addressing them in the beginning, he made a comment about how one of the Brethren would go out and get himself killed the night before because he had to feed or something like that.
That's right. You're right. I was hoping you were wrong, because it's like, this is the sect. This is this venerated sect of vampire. They don't even have a line.
But also, if we jump forward a little bit in the episode, these are the same vampires that later attack and someone refers to as members of the Brethren.
Yeah.
So
so be it.
Yeah, and that's that scene. Do you want to pick up the next scene?
Yeah, it's Buffy, Willow, and Xander. They're all in Buffy's bedroom. She's in a bathrobe, and they're trying to get a guy's opinion on, what kind of outfit she should wear, and they're throwing up different ones and blah, blah, blah. And, Xander's, he's not feeling it, obviously. So he's like, "Oh, I've got it." And he runs to the closet, and he pulls out, and he's like, "Here, an overcoat and a ski cap." and they're just like, "Okay." And
I like he says the ear flaps will really bring out your eyes.
Yeah, the ear flaps. Yeah. And by the way, they're in California, so I don't even know why they would own an overcoat and a ski cap, but okay. Right. So anyway, Willow finds
Buffy. We do know that Buffy's family was at one point well-to-do.
Yes, they
based
were.
off
so
of
probably went skiing and stuff.
So I'm sure they probably had ski vacations.
Yeah. So anyway, Willow finds what do you call it, a skirt? I don't know shit about women's clothing, so
these are
skirt dress thing.
I would refer to all of these outfits that they show her looking at as mini dresses.
Okay, so Willow finds one of those, and she's like, "Here, put this on." And Xander just stands there staring at him. He's like, "You're not bothering me. Like, it's okay." And so they, obviously make him skedaddle, and he just goes to the other side of the room and turns his back. And then it's so creepy. He tries to adjust this mirror. I guess it's like a jewelry box mirror or something, so that he can get a creep peek. And
it's so like
it's very uncomfortable.
It is so cringe and so uncomfortable. Yes. And like, I kind of almost, going back and rewatching, like, I kind of almost hate the fact that Xander has some of the funniest lines in the show. Because he's such a creep.
Yes, in these early episodes, he's a total creeper.
Yeah.
He's a total creeper, and it's like, ooh, like you said, it's very cringeworthy.
It makes it so hard to like the character.
It does. But luckily, he has outstanding writing otherwise, and a great actor playing it. Otherwise, I could very easily see hating this character.
Right.
So anyway, the doorbell rings, and Buffy's like, "Ooh, it's Owen!" You know, goes running down the stairs, flings the door open. It's Giles. She's like, you know, fuck. And he's like, oh, you know, look, right. He's got a newspaper in his hand, and he's like, right here, right here. Listen, it was true. I was right. 5 died. You know, blah 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 blah. And she's like, yeah, in a car crash. And he's like, yeah, but one of them, which happens to be shitty ADR guy, was wanted in a double homicide investigation. So he must be the anointed one. You know, and he's like, the bodies are at Sunnydale Funeral Home. We need to go there and investigate because he'll rise. Blah blah blah. And right about that exact same time, Owen shows up, and so Xander and Willow kind of take him off to the side into another room to kind of distract him while Buffy and Giles finish. He of course he's blown away by seeing the school librarian. He's like, wow, you really take your job seriously, because he's kind of berating Buffy at the time. And so they take him into the other room, and you know, of course, Xander's trying to convince him that he's like, she does not like to be kissed or touched. Actually, don't even look at her. So yeah, he's got the full creep mode on. And long story short, Buffy's just not having it. She's like, you know, I'm going on my date. You know, fuck it. So it's basically what she says. And she's like, listen, if the apocalypse comes, beat me. And she holds up her beeper, which, if you don't know what a beeper is, I hate you. That means you're young and full of life. But anyway, yeah, she holds it up. She's like, beat me. And Giles decides to go to the funeral home by himself, to do a little investigating, see what's up. And you know, Willow's like, well, maybe we should go with him. And Xander's like, well, he's already long gone. You know, it's screw it, because he's just totally, Xander's just completely consumed with the Buffy Owen situation. So
Right.
Yeah.
In fact, to the point where when Willow first says, you know, maybe we should go along, Xander's like, I think you're right. I don't trust that Owen guy.
Yeah.
And Willow's like, no, with Giles.
Yeah.
Xander does have a funny piece of dialogue here where after he tells Willow he's long gone, he's like, Giles will be fine. He's like super librarian. People forget knowledge is the ultimate weapon.
Yeah.
But this is the scene where we learn that grungy guy / bad ADR guy, his actual name is Andrew Borba.
Oh, Andrew Borba.
Drew Borba, as he's identified in that article.
Did he come up? Does he look like an Andrew Borba to you?
No, he
looks like a Rick Stingleton to me, or something along the. I don't know. He
I don't know about all
Andrew
that.
Borba.
I'm definitely getting like dishonorably discharged vet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's got the got the army jacket on. He's got that look. So yeah. And he's clearly cuckoo. You know.
Right.
Yeah. He might have been, maybe not dishonorably discharged. Maybe he was medically
discharged, possibly. Yeah.
Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Right. So then we follow Buffy and Owen on their date at the Bronze. They're sitting at a little table, and talking about Emily Dickinson. Owen says he relates to her because her life was quiet, and sequestered, and uneventful, which he relates to because he doesn't get out much. Buffy's like, you know, she says she really doesn't understand that. And Owen points out it's his own fault because he finds most girls frivolous, that there's more important things in life than dating. And he notices that Buffy's looking at her beeper, and he asks if he said something wrong. And she says no, and then grabs him by the hand and takes him out to the dance floor. And as they're dancing, Owen says that it's like Buffy's two different people. And she asks him which one he likes better, and he says he'll let her know. At that point, we cut to Cordelia coming into the Bronze with some of the Cordettes.
I put
And
Cordelia and the Biatch crew.
I'm sure you did.
And
Uh,
it's always different. It's always a different Biatch crew with her. You notice
Right.
that?
yeah.
But,
Well, extras come and go.
right,
Principal cast is forever.
right.
At least 3 seasons.
Yeah, and you can't pay to give them line. If they have to say a line, you have to pay them. Like they have to be they have to have their SAG card, and you got to pay them like a couple $100. So
Right. Of course, she immediately spots Buffy and Owen dancing, and she's not having it. She walks over to them and tries several times to get Owen to dance with her. And her and Buffy, once again, end up trading insults before Cordelia ultimately, reluctantly backs down and leaves them alone.
yeah, and she says to Owen, Cordelia does, well, when you're ready for the big leagues, let me know. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? That I don't know. That line coming from a female character just didn't. I don't know. Didn't resonate with me there. I was like, that's kind of I don't know. Anyway, then we go to Giles. He has arrived at the funeral home. He gets out of his car, and he's kind of looking around, outside, and he turns and back towards the doors, and there's a vamp there, and he's like, oh dear, oh shit, and he turns around to go the other way, and another vamp. These are two of the goons, or the Order of Aurelius vampires. So he's like, well, shit. He's got his bag with him, a bag of I'm what I'm assuming is books and maybe some slaying gear. So he reaches in there and he pulls out a cross and holds it up to one of them, to back him off, and he takes the opportunity to run into the funeral home through the doors, and of course they give chase. And he's trying different doors inside, to get inside of. Locked, lock. And they're still hot on his trail. Then we flash quickly to back to the Bronze, and Buffy and Owen are still dancing. And he says, "Are you having a good time?" And she says, "Yeah, I feel like a girl." And so it's clear that she's just been run down, and she hasn't been able to live a normal teenage life, really, and
Right.
now that she is. So yeah, she's happy. And then we flash back to the funeral home, and Giles finally finds an unlocked door, and he goes inside, and it looks to be, I don't know anything about funeral homes, but it looks to be the embalming room, I would assume. That's because there's like a what do you call it? Like a gurney area there to lay the body and do weird embalming stuff to it. And
from this scene on, I refer to it in my notes as the morgue.
Okay, I didn't know they had a morgue in a funeral home, so that's why I put embalming room.
I mean, there's inside that room. There's also
meat lockers.
Yeah, body
yeah,
store.
I call them meat lockers in my notes. But yeah, I was like, and there's like what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 9 of them.
Yeah, there's quite a few.
And I'm like, wow, this is a really busy funeral, but it is Sunnydale, and
right.
As we come to find out, there's a lot of dying in Sunnydale. So
right. Yeah, I just refer to it as the morgue from here on out, because that's what best represented it to me.
Okay, I can go with that. So he gets inside there, and he immediately slams the door shut because these vamps are still chasing him. And then he grabs a filing cabinet and barricades the door with it, and everything he can put his hand on, a couple of chairs, a coat rack, everything he can get his hand on. And of course they immediately start pounding on the door, and he's like, fuck, I'm trapped in here. And right about that time, he turns around, and they're like in a kind of a subterranean area here somehow, because I mean, it's clearly a basement because the window opens and it's Buffy, or I'm sorry, it's Xander and Willow who had followed him, but they're like laying down and it's just weird. You know, it's clearly they're above his level.
Yeah, it's sunken underground a little bit.
But
my guess is probably for cooling properties in addition to air conditioning and whatnot.
Keep the meat fresh. So there are huge steel bars on this window though. So you know, they're like, can you come out through this window? And he's like, no, that's not going to happen. And so they're like, well, you know, we need Buffy. And he's like, he says, well, she's got this beep thing with her. And I found that kind of funny. And they decide well, there's no phone in that room. You know, he looks around, he's like, but there's no phone here. You know, I can't use this beep device to beep her. And for some reason, they just, Willow and Xander decide, well, we'll just go get her. We know she's at the Bronze. We'll just go get her. One of us won't stay with you and keep you company. We'll both go. And I was like, the fuck? What?
Right. Like, why wouldn't one of you
at least one of them stay and be like, hey, at least we can chat or something, you know, while the Vans are trying to eat you.
Or like, and granted, I'm not condoning that either one of them should actively put themselves in danger, even though
it's supposed to be 16-year-old kids,
but even though they also do it repeatedly week after week so far.
Yeah.
But I feel like one of them could have been like, well, we're outside. We could possibly distract one or more of these vampires to chase after us.
Yeah.
Where we have a wider area to get away.
Or again, at the very least, one of us will stay here with you.
Right.
And then the other one can run to the Bronze and get Buffy. But they're just like, okay, we'll both go. See you later. Bye. And he's just like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to die alone.
Right. He's like, please do hurry.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I found that striking.
Yeah. Yeah. So that takes us back to the Bronze in the midst of Buffy and Owen's date. They stop dancing and they're standing by the stairs. Owen asks if Buffy wants anything to eat. And she says, sure, just make sure it's fattening.
Yeah.
And he leaves. Meanwhile, Cordelia's watching them from the shadows by a door, lamenting about what a disgusting display Buffy's putting on by throwing herself at Owen like she is, which she isn't.
Right.
She's not at all.
Cordelia was doing, but
right.
That's the irony of the situation.
And then Angel walks in, and Cordelia's like, hello, salty goodness.
Yeah, which I was like, wait, salty goodness?
Right.
Okay.
That's why I had to throw it in there. Like, it's classic.
I don't even know what that means. What? Like, I don't think I want to know what that means.
And she hightails it after Angel until she sees that he's walking over to and approaching Buffy.
Yeah.
Buffy and Angel exchange hellos. Cordelia's in disbelief. Like, how is this happening to me?
Yeah.
Angel says he was hoping he'd find Buffy there. And Buffy's like, oh, yeah? Really? And he proceeds to tell her that there's some bad stuff going down tonight and she needs to be out there. And she's like, not you too, brah. And she tries to leave and he stops her. He's like, what do you know? And she's like, I know everything, you know, gives him the whole spiel. And he's like, fine, that's great. You know, I just thought I'd warn you. And she's like put off by this. And she's like, warn me. And she's like, see that other bro at the bar? And she turns them around to look at Owen. And she's like, he came here to be with me. And the exchange throws me off a little bit because at what point in their relationship thus far has Angel ever indicated that he's shown up at the Bronze for any reason other than to warn Buffy about something?
That's the only thing he's ever shown up for. That's just fact.
Like, so maybe it's because he gave her his leather jacket and let her keep it last week.
Yeah, there was a jacket giving. Yes.
Like, maybe I don't know, but I was kind of like, whoa.
She was like, "Oh, it was an engagement jacket."
Right. But I was kind of like, whoa, Buff, calm down. Like,
Yeah,
this is
right.
what Angel does. Why are you mad?
Slow your roll.
But then in turn, Angel seems a little put off by the fact that she's there on a date.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I'm like, we're okay.
right.
This was their way of tearing the Band-Aid off really quick and just getting into the Buffy Angel situation, I guess.
Right. So Owen comes back with a muffin. A muffin for Buffy.
I put the same thing in my notes. I go,
I was
a
like,
muffin or is that cornbread?
I don't like.
I was like, she asked for something fattening and you bring back this dry brick.
Right, but
know.
and like also you're at, granted it's a under 21 club presumably, but you're still at a bar / club. Like
Eating
they're not
establishment.
right. Like they're not cooking up burgers in the back
Right,
or
you
something.
got a basket of French fries
Right,
or
like a $2 pizza that's been sitting in a warmer for
some
like 3
raggedy
hours.
ass nachos with some.
Right.
I was like, I put a muffin or is that cornbread? What the fuck?
Right. So
I wasn't the only one that noticed that.
So
And he was there a long time at the bar,
right, for
just to score
a freaking right,
or whatever
muffin.
it was.
Right. And like I can't tell what kind of muffin it is. Is it even a worthwhile muffin?
Yeah,
Like,
it did
I don't
look like
know.
it.
Right.
It looked like something that you see, like a plastic one that people put in a basket, like an old granny puts on a basket on her table.
Like, I didn't see any indication of blueberries or cranberries or chocolate chips. Nothing.
No, nothing delicious.
Like
that's why I thought. That's why I was like, dude, I think that might just be a cornbread muffin.
Wow.
Oh, okay. He's a shitty date.
So, Buffy introduces them. Owen's like, "How do you know Buffy?" Angel says, "From work." And Owen turns to Buffy and he's like, "You work?" And at that point, Xander and Willow run up to them. They're out of breath. And Owen's like, you guys show up everywhere. That's interesting. Of course, Xander wants to know why Angel's there. Angel says he guesses it's the same reason they're there. And then Buffy wants to know why any of them are there.
Yeah.
And Willow and Xander try and cover by saying they decided to stop fighting the inevitable and get together. And they thought it'd be fun to make Buffy and Owen's date a double date.
Yeah.
And Xander suggested it'd be fun if they all went somewhere, like maybe the Sunnydale funeral home, because they saw some guys there before and they seem to be having fun. And Buffy looks at Angel, and Angel basically gives her the "I told you so" look. So Buffy tells Owen she has to go, but she'll be back. And Owen pulls her to the side and he's like, "Are you trying to bail on me?" And she's like, "No, that's not it." And then she's like, "Do you remember when you said before I was like two different people?" And she's like, "Well, one of them has to go, but one of them is having a really good time and will come back." And he nods and she kisses him and runs off with Willow and Xander. And meantime, Angel's kind of approached Owen again, and Owen says to Angel, "She's the strangest girl."
Yeah. So that's the second time someone has said that.
Right.
Today about poor old Buff. So we're at the funeral home and the gang has arrived, Buffy, Willow, and Xander. And then what do you know? Oh shit, Owen's there. And they're like, the fuck? So Buffy, she's like, to them on the download, she's like, watch him, keep an eye on him. And then she goes off to find Giles. And meanwhile, Owen's thinking that they're just there to, see a dead body or, whatever. So he's none the wiser at this point. And she's off, like I said, trying to find Giles. She discovers the morgue room, but the door's been broken down. The barrier's gone. It's the room is trashed. The bars on the window they don't look broken. They look like someone ate them. Not like, what? Anyway, so they're destroyed, and she's just kind of walking around like, oh hell, like I'm too late, you know. And just about that time, one of the meat lockers slides open, and it's Giles, who is laying on top of a carcass.
I have that in
Uh,
my notes too.
yeah. And he's, she's like, or he's like, yeah, they got in the room and everything, but I was more than a match for him. And she's like, oh, really? What'd you do? And he's like, I hid with this chap. He was kind enough to bunk with me. And anyway, she's like, okay, we've got to figure out what's going on, but I've got to get rid of Owen first. And so I'm thinking, okay, she's going to go out there and give him, some kind of BS to get him out of there. No, she takes him, Xander, and Willow, and goes around, and she finds a door to the office, and he's like, oh, we've already tried that door. It's it's locked. And she coughs and pushes it down with her Slayer strength and breaks it open. She's like, oh, no, it's not. And she puts the three of them in there, and tells Xander and Willow, barricade the door. I'll be back. And I'm like, is that really the best, safest idea? Why not send them out to Giles' car and say, get the fuck out of here?
Right.
I don't know. It just seemed unnecessarily putting them in danger, but
I would guess that the theory was they really didn't know what was beyond, if any of the brethren were still left, outside the
yeah, because there has been no sign of them since
Right.
Buffy's arrived.
Right. So she probably figured it was safer to keep them inside and close to her, so to speak.
Yeah. But, yeah, I can buy that. So Giles and Buffy start going through the meat lockers. They're trying to find this quote unquote anointed one, but everything's empty. They're not finding anything.
Well, Buffy keeps finding body parts.
Well, yeah, she looks in that one and she's like, "Oh, parts." And I was like, "Wait a minute. Is that a thing?" But I just let it go. And then we zip back to the office, and Willow and Xander are barricading the door, and Owen's like, "What are you guys doing?" And they're just like, "Well, just in case, something." And he buys it. And he turns around, and there's a curtain, which he pulls the deal and opens the curtain up. And you just see him go, he's staring at something, and he goes, oh my. And Willow and Xander both turn around and look. They look that way too. And then we cut to a break.
We do. And when we come back from the break, we're back in the morgue. And Buffy and Giles have reached the last body storage drawer to check. And Giles flings it open, and Buffy pulls out the drawer, and it's empty. And Giles says the anointed one must be gone. And Buffy agrees, and she's like, this is where they keep all the dead bodies, right? And we cut back to the office in the funeral home. And Owen's watching the body through the window, fascinated. And Willow and Xander are watching, worried. And the body's hand moves. And Owen's like, I've read a lot about death, but I've never seen a dead body. Do they usually move? And the body's hand moves again as Willow and Xander get closer to the window to have a better look. At that point, the body's hand reaches up and pulls the sheet off. And he sits up in full vamp face, and it's Andrew Borba, grunge guy.
ADR guy.
Bad ADR guy. He stands up, he looks himself over, and then back at Willow and Xander and Owen, and then proclaims he's been judged. And they all back away from the window as he approaches the window and proceeds to smash it with his forehead.
Yeah, because, if I need to get through glass, first thing I'm doing is running my head into it.
Right. We cut back to the morgue where Buffy and Giles heard the window smashing, and she takes off for the office. We're back in the office, and we see Willow, Xander, and Owen frantically moving furniture away from the door as Andrew steps through the broken window. The furniture finally out of the way, Willow opens the door and they run out with Andrew in pursuit.
And he's saying some really dumb shit. And one of the lines I wrote down was he says, "Pork and beans, I smell you."
Yeah. And he's just singing random nonsense. So we're in the hall again of the funeral home, and Buffy runs into the rest of them coming down the hall. Xander tells Buffy Andrew's in the office, and Buffy tells them to get out of there. So they run off as Buffy looks for Andrew, and we hear him singing as he's making his way down the hall towards her. And she decides she's going to try and cut him off another way. Meanwhile, Willow, Xander, and Owen find the exit, but the brethren are blocking it. And Willow screams, and Xander pushes her behind him. And the vamps don't attack. Instead, they close the gates and lock them in. And they can all still hear Andrew singing, even though the hall's empty. So they run again, but they end up at the same dead end they came to when they first arrived at the funeral home. We're back in the morgue again, where Buffy rushes back in. Giles is still there, and she asks him if he has a stake, which he does, and gives it to her. And she tells him to go make sure everyone else is okay. And Andrew pops up behind Buffy, grabs her, and tosses her into a cabinet. She falls to the ground unconscious, and Giles rushes over to her. We're back in the hall with the trio. Owen hears the commotion, says someone has to help Buffy, and takes off towards the morgue with Willow and Xander in tow. Do you want to take it from here? Or
No,
you want me to keep going?
No,
okay.
you go.
So we're back in the morgue. Buffy's woken up, but she's still on the floor. Andrew's advancing on Giles, who holds up his cross. And Andrew's in pain, but he doesn't know why. He slaps Giles' hand away, causing the cross to go flying. And he grabs Giles and throws him into the crematory controls, which, of course, knocks Giles unconscious.
And ignites the fire.
And ignites the fire in the crematory chamber.
So I wonder what could possibly be coming.
So Andrew picks Buffy up and raises her above his head as Owen runs in and grabs a tray and swings it into Andrew's back, which stuns him and causes his knees to buckle, and he releases Buffy, who staggers into an open body drawer door and once again falls down unconscious.
Yeah.
Andrew grabs Owen by the neck and moves
more
in. More neck grabbing, and goes to bite him. But Owen grabs an urn from a rack next to them and smashes it over Andrew's head, causing him to fall down.
And you see all the ashes. It's like, wow, somebody's family is getting screwed.
So Buffy's back on her feet now, I'm sorry. Owen goes over to help Buffy, who's awake and trying to stand, at which point Andrew gets up, grabs Owen, and smashes the door of one of the body drawers into the back of Owen's head. And Owen collapses to the ground. At this point, Buffy's back on her feet, and she's had just about enough. And her and Andrew begin to engage in fisticuffs.
Karate and unnecessary gymnastics, I wrote.
Willow and Xander appear at the door, and Willow sees Owen wake up as Buffy and Andrew are still fighting. We see Giles wake up, and Buffy and Andrew are still fighting. Andrew finally lunges at Buffy, but she sidesteps and uses his forward momentum to basically launch him onto the gurney, which proceeds to roll to the crematory, where it comes to a stop. But because it hit the crematory, Andrew continues to slide through the open door into the flames. Giles kicks the gurney away and slams the door shut, and Buffy watches him burn as he screams until she finally notices that Owen is alive.
Yeah.
She goes over and helps Owen up, and she's like, "This probably isn't what you had in mind for our first date." And he says he was hoping they could finish at Ben and Jerry's. She says they still could, but Owen says he thinks he'll just walk home. Buffy says she'll get him there, and he says he'd rather go it alone. At which point Willow and Xander come over, and Xander says they'll make sure he gets there okay. And the three of them leave as Buffy watches. Giles comes up behind Buffy, and he starts to say something, probably advice or words of encouragement or something to try and comfort her. And she tells him not to and walks away.
Yeah, she's upset. So the next morning, we're at school. We're with Buffy, Xander, and Willow, and Buffy's like, "Well, did Owen say anything about me at all on the way home last night?" And long story short, no, he didn't. So she's kind of down in the dumps about it, and poof, there's Owen. They run into Owen, and he makes it clear he wants to see her again, and she's stoked. Because she thought all was lost and it was beyond repairable. So yeah, she's stoked, but then some things he says makes her realize that he just wants to be with her because he craves the danger. Wants to be Danger Boy, and she knows that number one, that wouldn't be a healthy relationship, but number two, it could very well get him killed. So she basically ends it, just kind of lets him down easily and would prefer to just be friends. And so he's kind of upset about it, but he,
she gives him the "it's not you, it's me" talk.
Yeah, she gives him the "it's not you, it's me" thing. So he's like, okay, and he leaves, and we get some cheesy 90s music, kind of like some along the lines of some Sarah McLachlan playing there in the background, because it's so sad.
We're 5 episodes in, and I'm starting to get the feeling that you're not a fan of the soundtrack.
No, I was a fan of 90s. I'll just say it pop. 90s pop was bleh.
Okay.
So anyway, Giles comes up and kind of reads the room and kind of understands what's going on, and starts to tell her a story about when he was 10 and found out that he was destined to be a watcher because his father was a watcher, and I believe he said his grandmother was a watcher before that.
Yeah, he's a third. Yeah, Giles is a third generation watcher.
Yeah, his third generation watcher.
Yeah, his father and his paternal grandmother were both watchers before him.
Yeah, and so he's kind of trying to relate with her, and and he's like, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be a what do you say, a fighter pilot or
a grocer.
Yeah, or maybe a grocer. Yeah, yeah. And basically saying to her, sometimes you got to make the sacrifice. You got to be unhappy to make the world a better place, kind of thing. In other words, saying you did the right thing cutting him loose. And she realizes it because, like she says, it would just end up getting him killed. She's like, Xander and Willow, they know the score. They know how to handle it. They know how to, stay safe and blah, blah, blah. She's like, but he's too much into it. He would end up getting himself killed, and she doesn't want to do that. And she's kind of hard on herself because she feels like she should have been with Giles instead of on that date. She's like, I blew it, and he assures her it wasn't her fault. Nothing bad happened in the end, and they just kind of feel their way as they go along. He says he doesn't. There's not a handbook, which We kind of actually find out later there's literally a Slayer handbook. But anyway, there's not a handbook, and we just kind of feel our way along as we go, and then she's like, well, at least I stopped that prophecy thing, and he's like, you did, yeah, no more anointed one, and he's like, and wherever the master is, he must be having a really bad day, and of course we zip to the master's underground lair. And he's talking more prophecy stuff. So let's just go ahead and play that clip of what he says there.
And in this time will come the anointed, and the slayer will not know him. She will not stop him, and he will lead her into hell. Welcome, my friend.
Ooh, so we discover that the anointed one is the
little boy on the bus.
From the shuttle bus. And that is why she would not know him and blah, 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 blah. So this little boy is now a vamp, and he is the anointed one, and he is with the master. And oh my, what is this going to mean for Buffy? And that's the end of the episode.
That is the end of the episode. Why don't we rate this?
Let's rate this bitch. I'll go first.
Go for it.
I am going to give this. I thought about this last night, and then I thought about it again today, and I had two different thoughts in my mind. So I'm going to go in the middle, and I'm going to give it a 3.5.
Okay.
It was fun. It was we got a little meat there in as far as Buffy's what she has to deal with constantly, and how it really affects her life, and I could think back to being that age, and I couldn't imagine having that kind of responsibility. I mean, the world would have ended because I would have not been able to handle that kind of responsibility at 16 years old, and so I like that aspect of it, and like I said, it was a fun episode. I like them when they're not too unnecessarily dialogue heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't mind heavy dialogue if it's necessary and it's well written and it really gives you important information in the universe. Otherwise, I like them to be a little more actiony, like this one was. Lots of cuts back and forth, and the action kept flowing. But yeah, 3.5. I think it was. You could certainly skip it. It's certainly not a must-see episode by any stretch, but fun nonetheless. What about you, James? How do you feel?
I'm gonna give it a 2.5.
Okay.
It's not a bad episode by any means. I think as far as furthering the overall story arc, it puts a lot on the table. It establishes obviously the Anointed One and his role in helping the Master rise, the Order of Aurelius. So I think as far as continuity episodes from the first season goes, it's enjoyable. And like I said, it adds some stuff to the table that wasn't there before. I think overall, obviously the topic of teen love has been covered in pretty much every teen drama since time began.
Yeah.
I think the challenge here was for them to do a Buffy story, Buffy slaying vampires and date at the same time. And it might sound corny to a casual viewer or someone who doesn't watch a lot, but I think it balanced that out well, between the mythology and telling an ongoing story and showing what Buffy goes through as a teenager and trying
your secret, yeah,
right, and trying to live a normal life.
Yeah,
So
I agree wholeheartedly.
So yeah, I'm gonna go 2.5.
Okie dokie. What was our body count?
6. We are at 6 this episode. So we have the member, member or brethren of Aurelius member slayed by Buffy at the beginning.
Hmm.
We have the van driver. We have the anointed one. The anointed one's mother. An anonymous woman.
A couple of randos.
Drained by a member of the Brethren, and Andrew Barba.
Yes, ADR guy.
Yes. Technically, he was killed twice, but
it's one body, so.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I
was just gonna say any goofs or gaffs.
Let's see, goofs or gaffs.
Or
I
deleted.
don't.
Anything deleted?
Oh yeah, we definitely have.
We always do. Yeah, there's always lots of deletions.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me find it here. So, I guess this could be a goof, or it could just be something we're not seeing off screen. In the scene where Buffy tells Giles, if the apocalypse comes, beat me, she grabs her pager from out of shot. The thing is, she's standing in the middle of the foyer.
Of the room.
So where did she get it from? And I guess there could be a table like just off camera and behind Giles that we're not seeing, but it's odd placement for the scene.
She got it from her Zeist pocket.
Her sized pocket.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a deep cut that only certain people are gonna get if they're listening. Let's see what else.
Oh, of course, you've already mentioned the goof of the man hand. I can't wait to go back and check that out.
Go back and watch. You won't, now that I've mentioned it, you won't be able to unsee it, and I don't
ever see that episode again. I'm gonna look for that immediately.
All
right.
The episode was alternately titled The Anointed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think it would have been I think that would be a better title than,
I think so too. I'm not sure.
Boy on the first day.
Right. I'm not sure why they changed it.
Yeah.
But
sometimes I feel like Joss Whedon, there were a lot of times throughout Buffy and Angel where he would try to get too creative, like too silly, for his own
right.
good.
Right.
So.
In the first draft of the script, Buffy and Owen were going to have their first date in a bowling alley where they would have met a mysterious looking guy who Buffy mistakes for a vampire. Despite the scene having been rewritten and removed, the actor Paul Feliz Montez is still credited as mysterious guy in the episode's final credits.
Well, he must have had a line then. He must have had at least one line.
Right.
Otherwise, they could have just removed him completely from the credits.
Owen was originally named Chambers, and
Chambers or Chambers as his first name.
I'm guessing his first name because that's how he was identified throughout the original script.
Chambers Thurman. Okay.
Right. So.
Somebody came along and said, how about we go with I don't know, Owen.
Right. Not that
Thurman. That sounds like a I don't know, like a 1920s gangster guy, look here, see?
Right.
Copper. Chambers Thurman here.
Not that Owen's much better.
No, but that's certainly better than Chambers. I don't know. That is so pretentious. I would want to punch that person.
Yeah.
Or slap their parents. Like, what how much were you smoking that night?
A few pop culture references that we didn't mention when we were going over the episode. There's a call out to Soylent Green in one scene.
Yeah.
And Buffy makes reference to Clark Kent. She tells Giles Clark Kent has a job when she's talking about how she just wants to date.
Oh, yeah.
How it's the 90s. She's certain she can balance having
man, it's the
Slayer, being the Slayer and dating. She says Clark Kent has a job. I just want to go on a date.
Yeah.
The music from this episode, the song playing, I know you're a big fan of the soundtrack, so
Massive fan.
the song playing when Buffy misses her first date with Owen and sees Cordelia and he dancing is a song called Rotten Apple by 3 Day Wheelie from their LP Rubber Halo, issued by IRS Records in 1996.
Well, clearly a multi-platinum album.
During
Several Grammy nominations.
the band playing on stage at the Bronze during Owen and Buffy's actual first date is Velvet Chain, and they're playing their song Strong, which made it onto the Buffy the Vampire Slayer soundtrack released by TVT Records in 1999, but was originally on their LP Warm, released by Overall Records in 1997. The song that Buffy and Owen dance to when Buffy asks him to dance is Treason, also by Velvet Chain, also from their LP Warm, released by Overall Records in 97. This is also Velvet Chain's first appearance on the show. I think they go on to make several more appearances. They're a fan favorite of the Buffy community.
Now, from what I understand,
not you, obviously, but
from what I understand, the lady who was on stage that's not the actual singer or anything of the band. Like, that's like an actress.
I don't know. That's possible. I do know that the lead singer of the band could at one point be found frequently interacting with fans on the official Buffy message board back in the day.
Okay. See, I didn't get into it as we discussed in, I think, our first episode. I didn't become a fan until quite a bit later. So,
yeah,
I missed a lot of that stuff.
The song playing at the Bronze when Angel shows up to warn Buffy about the Anointed One is Junkie Girl by the band Rubber. And I could not find any information about this band or this song as far as, album it was released on, release date, record label, anything. So
they must have went into the witness protection program.
And the final song that plays in the episode when Buffy breaks up with Owen is Let the Sun Fall Down by Kim Ritchie from Kim Ritchie's self-titled LP released by Mercury Nashville Records in 1995.
Well, that's a well-known record label, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Heard of it, though. Again, sounded very, Sarah McLachlan-y to me, Whatever.
Something I missed in the behind the scenes or trivia, whatever you want to call it. Buffy's or Giles's license plate is 2GPU 947.
Okay. Oh, I was waiting.
No, doesn't mean anything. Just putting it out there.
Okay. Okay. I was thinking, I was trying to connect it in my head, like, okay, what could that stand for? And I thought you were going to tell me, but
nope.
Okay.
As far as I can tell, it doesn't stand for anything. It's just a little piece of trivia thrown out there.
All right.
And I think that does it. Yeah.
Well, why don't we wrap up with some final thoughts? Do you have any final thoughts on the episode?
No.
Okay.
Overall is an enjoyable episode. Like I said, it didn't, it added to the goings on. It's not
didn't really add to the mythology, but it added to like character. It was a case study on a 16-year-old who is balanced unbelievable amount of weight on her shoulders.
It was a good showcase of what Buffy's going through as a
and
young.
I liked it,
as a young teenager who's just trying to balance being a teenager with also the incredible weight of
protecting the entire fucking world.
Right, saving the
That's why I
world
said if that had been me, the world
on a regular basis.
we would not be sitting here now because I would have failed miserably.
Yeah.
So go Buffy.
Yeah, 100%. So
all right. Well, I just want to say again, everybody out there, reach out, BuffyRevisited@gmail.com. Email us anything, cuss us out, pat us on the back, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just reach out and let us know what you think of the show and how we're doing, what we could change. If you don't want us to change anything, whatever. And hit us on our socials or, BuffyRevisited.com. Just reach out and touch someone.
Yeah.
And
yeah, definitely. BuffyRevisited@gmail.com. Like Jeremiah said, BuffyRevisited.com will give you links to all our socials. We're on Twitter @Slade Podcast. We're on Facebook. Look for us at Slade the Buffyverse Revisited Podcast. We're on YouTube now. This will be our second episode thrown up on YouTube. Search for us there at Slade the Buffyverse Revisited Podcast. We're also on TikTok if that's your preferred social media, at Slade Podcast. So hit us up anywhere you feel comfortable.
And James is our social media guru, and he's active. He's,
I am.
If you write us in, we might even read it on the show. Who knows?
Right. I'm actively on our socials every day. I will start posting more on the socials, but I am on there every day.
Yeah, once we can get some back and forth,
right. Right. Anybody that listens and does follow, I'm sure they've seen, the socials are active. So don't think no one's paying attention to them.
Oh yeah.
And we will. I check the Gmail regularly. I know Jeremy checks it regularly. So you'll get a response. You'll get a shout out. Whatever.
These are the early days of the podcast, and who knows? 5 years from now, we might be incredibly popular and swamped, and you might not ever get any kind of response, or we might not be able to respond. But these are the early days. This is the time to get in and really let us know what you think. Someday we are going to be so massively popular that yeah, okay. I'm just
maybe not, but I will make this pledge right now to you, Jeremy, and everybody out there, that even if we do become massively popular, the socials and the emails will still be maintained and gotten to.
Okay.
On a regular basis.
All right.
I'm going to make that promise to everybody right now.
I'm digging it. All right, guys. Well, thanks for joining us this week. We look forward to seeing you next week. And as always, I've been one of your hosts. I'm Jeremy.
I'm your other host, James.
And we will see you next week.